A homeless woman was having lunch in the park when a doctor said, "Pretend we're a couple." Jennifer Collins carefully held the plastic container holding her only meal of the day when the man in a white coat approached her on the park bench. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from the afternoon chill in New York City, but from the constant tension of not knowing where she would sleep the next night. "Please, I need your help," he whispered, looking nervously over his shoulder. "Pretend we're a couple. My ex-wife is coming this way and I can't face her right now." Jennifer almost choked on her spoonful of rice. She looked at the middle-aged man before her, his neatly trimmed grey hair contrasting with her own disheveled appearance. The coat had "Dr. Richard Anderson, Cardiology" embroidered on the chest. "Are you serious?" she asked, instinctively lowering her voice. "Completely. I know it sounds crazy, but she's with her lawyer, and if they see me alone here..." Richard ran his hand over his face, exhausted. "Please, just pretend for a few minutes." Jennifer hesitated. Her dignity, even shaken by her circumstances, screamed for her to refuse. But there was something in this man's desperation that touched a part of her that still remembered helping others. "All right," she murmured, moving slightly to make room on the bench. Richard sat beside her just as a blonde woman in high heels approached. She was accompanied by a man in a dark suit carrying a leather briefcase. "Richard!" the woman called, her sharp voice echoing through the park. "What a coincidence to find you here!" Jennifer felt the doctor's body tense beside her. She continued eating, trying to appear natural while watching the scene from the corner of her eye. "Hi, Elizabeth," replied Richard, his voice forcibly calm. "Dr. Wilson, what are you doing here?" Elizabeth looked around the park with disdain, as if the place were unworthy of her presence. Her eyes finally landed on Jennifer, analyzing every detail of her simple clothes and the food container in her hands. "We were going to the notary's office on the corner to handle the divorce papers," said the lawyer. "But since we found you here, we can talk about Emma's alimony." "We've already discussed this. The amount I pay is the maximum I can afford," replied Richard. "Oh, really?" Elizabeth crossed her arms. "Because I heard you bought a new car last month." Jennifer noticed Richard was about to protest when Elizabeth finally directed all her attention to her. "And who is your companion?" she asked, emphasizing the last word with a loaded, insinuating tone. Richard took a deep breath and, in a move that surprised even Jennifer, reached out and lightly touched her arm. "This is Jennifer. My girlfriend." The silence that followed was deafening. Jennifer felt her face grow warm, but maintained her composure, continuing to eat as if this were the most natural situation in the world. Elizabeth looked from Richard to Jennifer and back to Richard, her eyes narrowing. "Your girlfriend?" she repeated, her voice rising a pitch. "Richard, you can't be serious." "I'm completely serious," he replied, surprising himself with the firmness in his voice. Jennifer finally looked up from her lunch and looked directly at Elizabeth. There was something in the woman's posture that awakened an old strength she thought she had lost. "Is there a problem?" asked Jennifer, her voice polite but firm. Elizabeth examined her from head to toe, noting the worn clothes, the hair that needed cutting, the unpolished nails. "Problem?" Elizabeth let out a bitter laugh. "No problem. I'm just surprised by your recent choices, Richard." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. This really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing, "What kind of surprise?" Jennifer asked, setting the container aside and turning her full attention to the conversation. "Well," Elizabeth gestured vaguely in Jennifer's direction, "it's a significant departure from your usual pattern." Richard felt anger rising in his chest, but before he could respond, Jennifer stood up. Even in her simple clothes, there was a dignity in her posture that made Elizabeth take a step back. "Mrs. Elizabeth, isn't it?" said Jennifer, her voice calm but sharp. "Richard told me about you. It's interesting to finally meet you in person." "Oh, really? And what exactly did he say about me?" Elizabeth retorted, clearly irritated. Jennifer smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "That you were a person who always knew the value of things, but never the value of people." The lawyer cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "Perhaps we should return to the matter of the alimony," suggested Dr. Wilson. "Yes, let's do that," agreed Richard, still processing Jennifer's response. "As I said, I already pay the maximum required by law." "Emma has extra expenses with her psychologist," argued Elizabeth. "Expenses that came up after you decided to leave home." Jennifer watched Richard swallow hard. She could see that comment had hit him deeply. "I never refused to pay Emma's medical expenses," he said, his voice quieter now. "But you refused to keep our family together," Elizabeth shot back. Jennifer felt she had stepped into a very personal and intimate conversation. She began to stand up to give the former couple some privacy, but Richard gently touched her arm. "You can stay," he murmured. "Please." She nodded and sat back down, intrigued by the dynamics of that broken family. "Elizabeth, we've talked about this 1,000 times," said Richard, tired. "Our marriage ended a long time ago, you know that. Our marriage ended because you decided you wanted something different." She pointed at Jennifer. "Apparently something very different." Jennifer felt a twinge of guilt for being part of that charade, but there was something about Elizabeth's arrogance that deeply bothered her. "With all due respect," Jennifer interjected, "I believe the reasons why a marriage ends are rarely that simple." Elizabeth looked at her with contempt. "And you're an expert on the subject. How many marriages have you destroyed?" "None," Jennifer replied calmly. "But I've lived long enough to know that people separate when they can no longer grow together, not because they found someone better." Richard looked at Jennifer in surprise. There was a wisdom in those words that he didn't expect to hear from a stranger he had approached just minutes ago. Dr. Wilson checked his watch. "Elizabeth, we need to go. The clerk's office closes in an hour." Elizabeth shot one last venomous look at Jennifer and then at Richard. "This isn't over, Richard. Emma deserves more than what you're offering, and I will make sure she gets it." She turned on her heel and began to walk away, followed by the lawyer. But after a few steps, she turned back to them once more. "Oh, and Richard," she shouted, "I hope your new situation doesn't affect your reputation at the hospital. It would be a shame if patients started questioning the judgment of the doctor, who takes care of their hearts." With that, she was gone, leaving a heavy silence hanging in the air. Jennifer and Richard sat side by side for several minutes without saying anything. Her container of food was cold now, but she wasn't hungry anyway. Richard began, but stopped, not knowing how to continue. "It's all right," said Jennifer, standing up and gathering her few things. "I hope I helped." "Wait," he said, also standing up. "I can't just let you leave like this. You helped me when you had no reason to." Jennifer stopped and stared at him. There was sincerity in his eyes, but also a deep sadness she recognized all too well. "Everyone needs help sometimes," she said simply. Can I buy you lunch or dinner?" "It's the least I can do." Jennifer shook her head. "Thank you, but it's not necessary. At least let me know your full name. Your real one, I mean." "Jennifer Collins," she replied after a pause. "Jennifer Collins," he repeated, as if memorizing it. "I'm Richard Anderson, as you saw on my lab coat." She nodded and began to walk away again. "Jennifer," he called out once more. She turned around. "Thank you very much, really. You defended me in a way I didn't expect, and your words, they made sense." Jennifer smiled, this time a genuine smile. "Take care of your daughter, Dr. Richard. Children suffer a lot when their parents separate, even when it's for the best." And with that she was gone, leaving Richard alone in the park, watching her figure disappear among the trees. That night, Jennifer settled into a temporary shelter in the city center. The place was clean but noisy, full of people who, like her, had lost their way in life for one reason or another. She lay on the thin, narrow cot, pulling the blanket up to her chin, and thought about the strange encounter that afternoon. Dr. Richard seemed like a good man, stuck in a difficult situation with his ex-wife. His daughter, Emma, was clearly suffering from the divorce. Jennifer knew that kind of pain well. She herself had gone through a difficult divorce many years ago, when she was still a literature teacher at a private school in New York City. But that was before everything fell apart, before she lost her home, her savings, her dignity. 3 years ago, she was Jennifer Collins, a respected teacher with 35 years of experience, a small house of her own in the Brooklyn Heights neighborhood, and a modest but sufficient retirement. 3 years ago, she still believed in people. Everything changed when she met Edward Thompson online. He introduced himself as a financial consultant and promised to double her savings through safe investments. Jennifer, a widow for 5 years and wanting to secure a more comfortable future, trusted him with her life savings. The scam was perfect. Edward disappeared with everything, including the money she had borrowed using her house as collateral. In 6 months, Jennifer lost everything. The house was foreclosed by the bank, her retirement didn't even cover basic rent, and shame kept her from asking the few relatives she had for help. That's how a 58-year-old teacher ended up living on the streets of New York City, depending on the charity of others to survive. The next morning, Jennifer woke up early as she always did. One of the few advantages of not having a home is that you develop a very precise biological clock. She got ready in the shelter's bathroom, combed her hair as best she could, and went out for another day of uncertainty. Her routine was simple. Walk to the park where she had met Dr. Richard the day before, hope someone would offer work or food, and try to keep her dignity intact for one more day. When she arrived at the park, Jennifer was surprised to see Richard sitting on the same bench where they had met. He wasn't wearing his lab coat today, instead dressed in a light blue button-down shirt and jeans. He looked younger, more relaxed. He saw her approaching and waved. "Jennifer, what a coincidence." She hesitated for a moment, but eventually approached. "Dr. Richard, what brings you here today?" "Actually, I was waiting for you," he confessed, looking slightly embarrassed. "I thought you might come here again for lunch." Jennifer sat on the bench beside him, keeping a respectful distance. "Why were you waiting for me?" Richard ran his hand through his hair. "Last night I couldn't stop thinking about our conversation. What you said about marriages and growth, it made a lot of sense, and I wanted to better understand who you are." "There isn't much to understand," said Jennifer, opening the same plastic container with leftovers from the previous day's meal. "I'm just another person trying to survive." "I don't believe that," said Richard. "The way you spoke with Elizabeth, the dignity you maintained even in an uncomfortable situation, you're clearly not just another person." Jennifer chewed slowly, thinking about her response. "Circumstances can change quickly, Dr. Richard. The person I am today isn't the same as 3 years ago." "What happened 3 years ago?" She stared at him for a long moment, weighing whether to tell her story. There was something in his eyes that suggested he genuinely cared, not just morbid curiosity. "I was a teacher," she finally said. "A literature teacher for 35 years. I had my home, my routine, my dignity. Then I trusted the wrong person and lost everything." Richard stayed silent, absorbing the information. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "No need to be sorry," replied Jennifer. "Life teaches us there are no guarantees. I simply learned that in a more dramatic way than most." "But you didn't give up." "Not yet," Jennifer smiled sadly. "Some days are harder than others, but I haven't given up yet." Richard opened a bag beside him and pulled out a wrapped sandwich. "I brought this for you," he said, extending the snack. Jennifer looked at the sandwich, then at him. "Why are you doing this?" "Because yesterday you helped me when I needed it. And because—" He hesitated. "Because it's been a long time since I met someone who speaks so honestly about life." Jennifer accepted the sandwich, but didn't open it immediately. "Dr. Richard, I know you want to help, but I can't accept your charity indefinitely." "It's not charity," he protested. "It's, friendship?" She stared at him, surprised. "Friendship. I know it might seem strange considering how we met, but yesterday was the first time in months I had a real conversation with someone. Not about medical procedures or divorce papers or money problems, a real conversation about life." Jennifer unwrapped the sandwich slowly. It was ham and cheese, with tomato and lettuce. Simple, but clearly made with care. "Your ex-wife is right about one thing," she said. I'm not exactly the type of person a cardiology doctor usually has as a friend." "Elizabeth has opinions about many things," replied Richard. "Most of them are wrong." They ate in silence for a few minutes, watching the park's activity. It was noon on a Wednesday, and there were few people around. Some mothers with young children, retirees reading newspapers, workers enjoying their lunch break. "May I ask about your daughter?" said Jennifer. Richard sighed. "Emma is 16. She's a smart girl, but she's having a hard time with the divorce. Elizabeth convinced her that I abandoned the family out of selfishness." "Did you?" The direct question took him by surprise. "I don't know," he admitted. "I'd felt suffocated for years. Elizabeth and I stopped truly communicating long ago. We lived like strangers in the same house. But Emma suffered because of my decision." "Children always suffer," said Jennifer gently. "But sometimes parents staying together unhappily causes more damage than separating." "Do you have children?" "No. My ex-husband and I tried for years, but it wasn't possible. Maybe it was for the best, considering how things ended." Richard nodded, understanding. "Sometimes I wonder if Emma wouldn't be better off if Elizabeth and I had separated years ago, before all the bitterness piled up." "The past can't be changed," said Jennifer. "We can only try to do better from here on out." "Easier said than done." "Almost everything is easier said than done," Jennifer agreed. "But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try." Richard smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen on his face. "You really were a teacher, weren't you? You have this wise way of talking about things. 35 years teaching teenagers teaches you a few things about human nature," said Jennifer. "And living on the streets teaches you the rest." That transition couldn't have been easy. Jennifer shook her head. "The first months were the worst. You lose more than material possessions when you lose your home. You lose your identity, your sense of belonging, your dignity. But after a while, you realize you're still the same person inside. The circumstances changed, but who you fundamentally are remains." "How do you maintain that perspective?" "Some days I can't," she admitted. "Some days I just want to give up. But then I remember how many students I helped over the years, how many lives I touched, and I think there must still be some purpose for me being here." Richard stayed quiet for a moment, absorbing her words. "Jennifer, can I ask a personal question?" "Go ahead." "Where do you sleep?" She hesitated. "It depends on the night. Sometimes at the city shelter, sometimes in other places." "And you have no family? Friends who could help?" Jennifer sighed deeply. "My parents passed away years ago. I have a sister in Boston, but we haven't spoken in a long time. As for friends..." She stopped. "It's funny how people disappear when you need them most. Some out of embarrassment, others out of fear that your situation might be contagious." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It taught me to value genuine acts of kindness when they appear." They finished eating in comfortable silence. Richard looked at his watch. "I need to get back to the hospital in 15 minutes, he said. "But can I come here tomorrow? Same time?" Jennifer studied him carefully. "Why would you do that?" "Because I enjoy talking with you. Because it does me good to have someone who speaks the truth, even when it's hard to hear. And because..." He hesitated. "Because I think you also enjoy having someone to talk to." She smiled, and he realized it was a truly beautiful smile. "All right, Dr. Richard. Until tomorrow." "Just Richard is fine," he said, standing up. "After all, we're friends, aren't we?" "Until tomorrow, Richard." Jennifer watched him leave, intrigued by this man who had entered her life so unexpectedly. It had been a long time since anyone had been interested in her opinions or her company. It was a strange feeling, but a good one. The next morning, she woke up at the shelter with a feeling of anticipation she hadn't felt in years. She got ready more carefully, managed to borrow some lipstick from one of the other women, and walked to the park with lighter steps. Richard was already there when she arrived, and this time he had brought 2 sandwiches and 2 bottles of water. "I thought we could have a proper lunch together today," he said, smiling. "Richard, you don't need to do this. I know you're trying to be kind, but..." "Jennifer," he gently interrupted her. I'm not doing this out of pity. I'm doing it because I want to be here. She stared at him, looking for signs of dishonesty, but found only sincerity. All right, she said finally, sitting down next to him. As they ate, Richard told her about his day at the hospital. He had operated on a 45-year-old man who'd had a heart attack, and the surgery had been a success. That must be rewarding, said Jennifer. Saving lives every day. It is, but it's also heavy. Sometimes you lose patience and it never gets any easier. I imagine not. And what about you? How have your days been? Jennifer told him about her survival routine, but without self-pity. She spoke about the small kindnesses she encountered, the bakery lady who sometimes gave her leftover bread, the mall security guard who let her use the restroom, the librarian who allowed her to read books during the hottest hours of the day. Do you still read? Asked Richard. It's one of the few things that still brings me pleasure. Books are faithful companions. They don't judge you, and they're always there when you need them. What kind of books did you like to teach? Jennifer's eyes lit up. Brazilian literature mainly. William Faulkner, Virginia Woolf, Herman Melville, but also world literature. Shakespeare, Hemingway, Dostoevsky. Richard listened to her, fascinated. There was passion in her voice when she spoke about books, a life that returned to her eyes. You must have been an incredible teacher, he said. I was good at what I did, Jennifer admitted modestly. I love teaching young people to discover the power of words, the beauty of literature. Do you miss it? Every day. But you can't live in the past. You have to find meaning in the present, even when the present is difficult. After lunch, Richard needed to return to the hospital, but promised to be back the next day. And so began a routine that extended over the next 2 weeks. Every day, Richard brought food to share with Jennifer. They talked about books, medicine, life, philosophy. Jennifer discovered that Richard had studied literature before medicine, and they spent hours discussing favorite authors. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. It was in the 3rd week that everything changed. Jennifer was waiting on the usual bench when she saw a young woman approaching. She was a thin girl with blonde hair wearing a school uniform. She looked around nervously, clearly searching for someone. Excuse me, said the girl, addressing Jennifer. Have you seen a man around here, tall, graying hair, around 50 years old? Jennifer felt her stomach tighten. She was certain this was Emma, Richard's daughter. May I ask who's asking? I'm Emma Anderson. I'm looking for my father. Someone from the hospital said they saw him coming this way. Jennifer took a deep breath. This was the moment she knew would eventually come. Sit down, she said gently, patting the bench beside her. Emma hesitated but sat down, keeping her distance. You're Emma. Your father talks about you a lot. The girl's eyes widened. You know my father. Are you that woman my mother mentioned? Jennifer nodded slowly. We're friends, your father and I. Friends? Emma looked her up and down, noticing the simple clothes, the hair that needed care. What kind of friendship is that? The kind based on honest conversations and mutual respect, Jennifer replied calmly. My mother said that you live on the streets. Your mother is right. Emma seemed unsure how to react to the direct honesty. So it's true. My father is involved with a homeless woman. Jennifer felt a pang of pain at the question, but kept her voice serene. Emma, your father is a good man going through a difficult time in his life, just like me. Sometimes people in difficult times find each other and help one another. He helps you? How? By bringing food, offering companionship, reminding me that I'm still a person worthy of respect. And you? How do you help him? Jennifer thought carefully about her response. By listening without judgment, speaking truths that perhaps no one else dares to speak, reminding him that he is more than his problems. Emma stayed quiet for a moment. My mother says he abandoned our family because of you. Your mother is wrong, said Jennifer firmly. I met your father just 3 weeks ago, and from what he told me, Your parents had problems for years. I didn't destroy anything. I only appeared after things had already fallen apart. But if you hadn't met... Emma, look at me, said Jennifer, turning to face the girl directly. Your parents separated because they couldn't make each other happy anymore. That's not your fault, it's not your father's fault, and certainly not my fault. Sometimes two people simply grow in different directions. Tears began to stream down Emma's face. But I wanted them to stay together. I wanted things to go back to how they were before. Jennifer felt her heart breaking. She remembered herself at the same age, dealing with her own parents' divorce. I know you wanted to, and it's natural to want that, but sometimes what we want isn't what's best for everyone involved. How would you know? You don't even have a family. The cruel observation hit Jennifer like a punch to the stomach, but she didn't let the pain show on her face. You're right, she said calmly. I don't have a family, but I was young once. I've experienced losses. I've felt like my world was falling apart. And I've learned that even when everything seems lost, life can still find ways to surprise us. Emma wiped her tears with her uniform sleeve. It's not fair, she murmured. No, it's not, agreed Jennifer. But life is rarely fair. The question is what we do with the injustices we face. At that moment, Richard appeared in the park. He stopped when he saw the two women sitting together, his expression shifting from confusion to concern. Emma, he called, approaching. What are you doing here? Emma stood up quickly. I came looking for you. I wanted to meet your friend. Richard looked from Emma to Jennifer, clearly uncomfortable. How did you know where to find me? Nurse Sarah said she saw you coming this way every day. Jennifer stood up too. Richard, I should go. You two need to talk. No, said Emma quickly. I'd like you to stay, if you don't mind. Jennifer looked at Richard, who nodded slightly. All right. The three sat on the bench, Emma in the middle. Dad, said Emma, her voice trembling slightly. Why didn't you tell me about Jennifer? Richard sighed. Because I knew it would be hard to explain. And because I wasn't sure how you'd react. Mom said terrible things about her. Your mother is angry. Sometimes when we're angry, we say things we shouldn't. Emma turned to Jennifer. Is it true you used to be a teacher? It's true. And you lost everything because of a scam? Jennifer nodded. And you have no one, no family? I have no close ones, no. Emma stayed quiet for a moment, processing the information. That must be very lonely. Sometimes it is, admitted Jennifer, but meeting your father has made the days less lonely. Do you like each other? The direct question made Richard and Jennifer exchange looks. We're friends, said Richard carefully. But do you like each other as more than friends? Jennifer took a deep breath. Emma, your father helped me at a time when I really needed kindness, and I hope I've helped him too. If that's more than friendship, we're still figuring that out. Jennifer's honesty surprised Richard. They hadn't spoken openly about the feelings growing between them. Dad, said Emma, turning to Richard, are you happy? I mean, happier than you were before? Richard considered the question carefully. Yes, I am happier. Not just because of Jennifer, but because I finally stopped pretending everything was okay when it wasn't. And are you going to marry her? Emma, protested Richard, blushing. It's a valid question, said Jennifer with a smile. But it's too early to think about that. First, I need to rebuild my life, and your father needs to sort things out with your mother. Emma nodded, looking satisfied with the answer. Jennifer, she said, can I ask one more question? Of course. Do you think you could teach me some things? About literature, I mean. I'm having trouble with writing at school. Jennifer felt her heart warm. I'd be delighted to help you. Even though I was rude to you. Emma, you're going through a difficult time. It's natural to be defensive when your world is changing. I don't hold any grudges about that. Emma smiled, the first genuine smile she'd given since arriving. Thank you. Richard watched the interaction between his daughter and Jennifer with a mixture of relief and admiration. Jennifer had handled the difficult situation with more grace than he could have expected. "Emma," he said, "you can't tell your mother about this place, about our meetings here." "Why not?" "Because she wouldn't understand, and because it would cause more trouble for all of us." Emma hesitated. "Dad, are you ashamed of Jennifer?" The question caught him off guard. "No, of course not. It's complicated." "It doesn't seem complicated," said Emma. "You like each other. You're good for each other. Shouldn't that be how love works?" Jennifer and Richard fell silent, surprised by the simplicity of Emma's observation. "What are you afraid of, Dad?" the girl continued. Richard ran his hand through his hair, a gesture Jennifer had learned to recognize as a sign he was nervous. "I'm afraid of what people will think. I'm afraid of how it will affect my career, my reputation. I'm afraid you'll be ashamed of me." "Dad, I'm already ashamed of you," Emma said bluntly. "What?" "I'm ashamed of the way you're hiding here. Jennifer is amazing. She's smart, kind, brave, and you're treating her like she's some shameful secret." That's what's embarrassing. Jennifer was moved by Emma's unexpected defense, but she could also see that the words had hurt Richard. "Emma," she said gently, "your father is doing the best he can in a difficult situation. It's not easy to navigate between what we feel and what society expects from us. But shouldn't what you feel be more important?" "It should," Jennifer agreed. "But the real world doesn't always work that way." Emma stood up abruptly. "Then the real world is stupid." With that, she walked away quickly, leaving Jennifer and Richard alone on the bench. "She's right," Richard said after a moment. "About what?" "About me treating you like a shameful secret. About the real world being stupid sometimes." Jennifer touched his arm gently. "Richard, I understand your concerns. I truly do. My presence in your life could cause complications you don't need." "Don't say that." "Why not? It's true. You're a respected doctor. I'm homeless. People will judge. They'll talk. Your ex-wife could use this against you in the divorce." Richard turned to face her. "Jennifer, do you want to know what I think about all this?" "What?" "I think that in the last 3 weeks I've been happier than I was in the last 5 years. I think you've made me remember who I really am underneath all the pressure and expectations. And I think if people want to judge me for that, that's their problem, not ours." Jennifer felt tears in her eyes. "Richard, and one more thing," he continued. "Emma is right. You are amazing. You're smart, brave, compassionate, and I'm lucky to have you in my life regardless of how we met or what our current circumstances are." Jennifer couldn't hold back her tears. "Thank you," she whispered. Richard took her hand. "Jennifer, I'd like to help you get out of this situation, not out of pity, but because you deserve something better, and because I care about you. Richard, I can't accept charity. It's not charity. It's an investment in us, in what we can build together." Jennifer looked into his eyes and saw sincerity, affection, hope. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting you stay at my house, temporarily, until you get back on your feet. I have a guest room I don't use. You could stay there while you look for work, while you rebuild your life." Jennifer felt her heart race. "Richard, that would be a lot. Your ex-wife, your daughter, what people will think. Let me worry about that. The question is, do you want to try?" Jennifer was silent for a long moment, weighing her options. Richard's offer represented a chance to start over, to regain some dignity, to have an address, a place to shower, a clean bed. But it also represented risks. For her, because getting attached to this new stability and then losing it would be devastating. For him, because his life would certainly get more complicated. "Can I think about it?" she finally asked. "Of course. Take all the time you need." That night, Jennifer lay on the thin cot at the shelter and thought about Richard's offer. Part of her wanted to accept immediately. The prospect of sleeping in a real bed, of showering whenever she wanted, of having a place to call her own even if temporarily, was almost irresistible. But another part of her was terrified. What if she got used to that life, and then Richard changed his mind? What if the situation became uncomfortable, What if she ended up being just another burden in his life? 3 days later, she still hadn't given an answer. She kept meeting Richard in the park every day, but there was a tension in the air that hadn't been there before. It was on a rainy Thursday that everything changed once again. Jennifer was taking shelter under an awning when she saw a man approaching. She recognized him immediately, Edward Thompson, the con man who had destroyed her life. He looked different, thinner, unshaven, clothes rumpled, but it was definitely him. "Jennifer," he said, looking as surprised as she was. "Jennifer Collins." She felt her blood run cold. "Edward, wow, you're okay? I mean, what happened to you?" The audacity of the question left Jennifer speechless for a moment. "What happened to me?" she repeated, her voice low but full of pent-up emotion. "You know exactly what happened to me, Edward." He had the decency to look embarrassed. "Jennifer, I can explain." "Explain what? How you stole a lifetime's savings, how you made me lose my house, how you destroyed my life." "It wasn't like that." "It wasn't like that?" Jennifer's voice rose. "Then how was it, Edward? Explain to me how it wasn't like that." Edward looked around nervously, noticing that some people were starting to pay attention to their conversation. "Look, the deal went wrong, okay? It wasn't my fault. The investments—" "What investments, Edward? You just took my money and disappeared." "Jennifer, keep your voice down. People are staring." "Let them stare," she shouted. "Let everyone know what kind of person you are." Edward took a step back. "Jennifer, you're exaggerating. It wasn't that much money." The statement was the last straw. Jennifer felt years of anger, humiliation, and despair explode inside her. "Wasn't that much money?" She advanced toward him. "It was everything I had. That was my retirement, my savings, the money I had saved over 35 years of work. It was my security, my future." "But you're okay, aren't you? I mean, you're here, you're alive." "I live on the streets, Edward," shouted Jennifer. "I sleep in shelters, eat through other people's charity, wear donated clothes. You destroyed my life." Edward continued backing away, but Jennifer followed him. "Jennifer, listen. Maybe we can talk, find a solution." "Solution? What solution? Will you give me back my 3 lost years? Will you give me back my dignity, my home, my sense of security? I don't have money right now, but maybe in the future." "In the future?" Jennifer laughed bitterly. "You said the same thing 3 years ago. You said my money was safe, that it would earn interest, that it would double. You lied then, and you're lying now." At that moment, she felt a gentle hand on her shoulder. She turned and saw Richard beside her, his face worried. "Jennifer," he said softly, "is everything all right?" "Richard," she took a deep breath, trying to calm down. "This is Edward Thompson, the man who stole my entire life." Richard looked from Jennifer to Edward, immediately understanding the situation. "You're the con man," he said, his voice cold. "Con man?" Edward seemed offended. "I'm a financial consultant. There were some misunderstandings with investments, but—" "Misunderstandings?" interrupted Richard. "You drove this woman to ruin. Because of you, she lost everything." "And who are you?" Edward examined Richard, noticing the medical coat. "The homeless woman's boyfriend?" The insult hit Richard like a punch, but Jennifer reacted first. "Shut up!" she shouted. "Don't you dare talk about him like that. Richard is more of a man in one day than you'll ever be in your entire life." "Jennifer," Edward tried. "No!" she interrupted him. "You have no right to talk to me, to talk to him, to breathe the same air as us. You're a parasite who lives by destroying other people's lives." Edward looked around, noticing that a small crowd had formed. Okay, he said, raising his hands. "I'll leave. But Jennifer, if you change your mind and want to talk—" "Never," she shouted. "And if I see you near me again, I'll find a way to make you pay for everything you've done." Edward quickly walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Jennifer stood still in the middle of the sidewalk, trembling with anger and adrenaline. Richard gently wrapped his arm around her. "Come on," he said. "Let's get out of here." He took her to a nearby cafe and ordered 2 hot teas. Jennifer was visibly shaken, her hands trembling as she held the cup. "I'm sorry," she finally said. "I'm sorry you had to see that." Why are you apologizing? Because I lost control. I shouted in the street like a madwoman. You must be ashamed of me. Richard leaned forward and took her hands. Jennifer, look at me. She raised her eyes, still filled with unshed tears. I'm not ashamed of you. I'm proud of you. Proud? You faced the man who destroyed your life. You defended your dignity and mine. You showed a courage that most people don't have. But I shouted. I made a scene. You had every right to shout. That man took everything from you and still had the audacity to downplay what he did. Any normal person would have reacted the same way. Jennifer took a deep breath, feeling slightly better. Richard, when he called you the homeless woman's boyfriend, how did you feel? Richard considered the question carefully. At first I felt angry at the way he said it, but then I realized the part that bothered me the most wasn't him calling me your boyfriend. It was him using the term homeless as if it were an insult. And isn't it? For some people, maybe. But to me, you're not homeless. You are Jennifer Collins, a former teacher, an intelligent and courageous woman who has been through difficult circumstances. Your housing situation doesn't define who you are. Jennifer felt tears streaming down her face. How can you see things that way? Because that's how they are, and because... He hesitated, then continued. Because I've fallen in love with you, Jennifer. Not because of your situation, not in spite of your situation, but because of who you are as a person. The words hung in the air between them. It was the first time either of them had used the word love. Richard, Jennifer began. I know it's complicated, he said quickly. I know there are obstacles that people will judge, that your ex-wife will use this against me, but I can't pretend anymore that what I feel for you is just friendship. Jennifer stayed silent for a long moment, processing the confession. I've fallen in love with you too, she finally said, and it terrifies me. Why does it terrify you? Because I'm afraid of losing you too. I lost everything once, Richard. I don't know if I could survive losing you. Richard stood up and sat next to her in the cafe, taking her hands. Jennifer, I can't promise that we won't have problems. I can't promise it will be easy. But I can promise I will fight for us. I can promise I won't give up at the first sign of difficulty. And your career? Your reputation? Your family? My career is important, but it's not more important than you. My reputation will survive. And if it doesn't, I'll build a new one. And as for my family, he smiled. Emma already likes you more than she likes me. And Elizabeth. Well, Elizabeth will have to get used to it. Jennifer laughed through her tears. Are you sure about this? Because once we start down this path, there's no turning back. People will know. They will talk. They will judge. I'm sure, Richard said firmly. The question is, are you sure? Jennifer looked into his eyes and saw love, determination, hope. She saw a future she thought was lost forever. Yes, she said. I'm sure. Richard smiled and kissed her gently, right there in the cafe, not caring who might be watching. When they parted, Jennifer laughed. Well, there's no hiding anything now, is there? There really isn't, Richard agreed. And you know what? I feel relieved. That afternoon, Richard took Jennifer to see his house. It was a medium-sized house in a middle-class neighborhood, well kept but not showy. This is where you'll live, he said, showing her the guest room, for as long as you need. The room was simple but cozy, with a single bed, a small desk, a small closet, and a window that looked out onto a garden. Richard, this is too much, said Jennifer, moved. It's the least I can do. But what if your ex-wife finds out? What if this complicates your divorce? Let me worry about that. The important thing is that you have a safe place to stay. Jennifer sat on the bed, still hardly believing what was happening. How long has it been since you slept in a real bed? Richard asked. 3 years and 4 months, she answered without hesitation. Then it's time you had a good night's sleep. That night, Jennifer took a real hot shower for the first time in years. Richard had left clean clothes for her, a pair of jeans and a blouse he had bought on the way home. When she lay down in the bed between clean, soft sheets, Jennifer began to cry. Not from sadness, but from a relief so profound it felt physically painful. For the first time in 3 years, she didn't need to worry about where she would sleep the next night. The next morning, Jennifer woke up disoriented for a moment, not knowing where she was. Then she remembered. She was in Richard's house, in a real bed, safe. She got up and walked to the window. In the garden, she saw Richard watering the plants, already dressed for work. When he saw her at the window, he waved and smiled. Jennifer felt her heart warm. Perhaps finally her life was starting over, but complications weren't long in coming. 2 days later, Elizabeth showed up at Richard's door. Jennifer was in the kitchen preparing lunch when she heard the doorbell ring. "Richard isn't here," she said, opening the door. Elizabeth looked her up and down, noticing the clean clothes, the washed hair. "I see you've moved in," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "Temporarily," Jennifer replied with dignity. "Of course, temporarily," Elizabeth smiled coldly. "May I come in? I'd like to talk to you." Jennifer hesitated, but ended up opening the door. "Coffee?" she offered, trying to maintain courtesy. "No, thank you. I don't plan to stay long." They sat in the living room, facing each other. "Jennifer, isn't it?" began Elizabeth. "I'll be direct with you. I know exactly what you're doing." "And what am I doing?" "You're taking advantage of a vulnerable man going through a difficult divorce. You saw an opportunity and grabbed it." Jennifer felt anger rising, but kept her voice calm. "Elizabeth, you don't know me. You know nothing about me or my relationship with Richard. I know enough. I know you're homeless and managed to convince my ex-husband to let you live in his house. That seems very calculated to me. Richard offered me help because he wanted to. I didn't ask for anything." "Of course you didn't ask. Women like you never ask directly. You make men think it was their idea." Jennifer stood up, controlling the impulse to tell Elizabeth to leave. "Elizabeth, I'll say this once. I love Richard. Not for his material possessions, not for the security he can offer, but because he is a good man who treats me with respect and dignity. If that bothers you, that's your problem, not mine." Elizabeth also stood up. "Do you think it will last? Do you think when the novelty wears off, when he gets tired of playing savior, he'll still want you around?" The words hit Jennifer like daggers, awakening fears she was trying to suppress. "That's between him and me," she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "Is it?" Elizabeth smiled maliciously. "Because as far as I know, it affects Emma too. And as her mother, I have the right to be concerned about the influences in my daughter's life. Emma and I get along. For now. But do you think a teenager will keep thinking it's cool to have a homeless stepmother? I'm no one's stepmother. Not yet. But that's what you want, isn't it? To marry Richard, secure your financial future." Jennifer took a deep breath, trying to control her anger. "Elizabeth, you're projecting your own motivations onto me. Maybe for you, marriage was about financial security, but for me, it's about love and companionship." Elizabeth's face twisted in anger. "How dare you—" "Speak the truth," interrupted Jennifer. "You're afraid, Elizabeth, afraid that Richard is happier with me than he ever was with you. And you know what? He is." Elizabeth grabbed her purse and headed for the door. "You'll regret this," she said, her voice trembling with anger. "I'll make sure Richard sees who you really are." "He already knows who I am," Jennifer replied calmly. "That's why he loves me." After Elizabeth left, Jennifer sat on the sofa, trembling. The conversation had been more difficult than she expected, and Elizabeth's cruel words had planted seeds of doubt in her mind. What if Elizabeth was right? What if Richard really did get tired of her? What if she was being naive to believe that relationship could work? When Richard came home that night, he found Jennifer quiet and thoughtful. "Did something happen?" he asked, sitting beside her on the sofa. Jennifer told him about Elizabeth's visit, trying to remain objective. Richard became furious. "She had no right to come here and speak to you like that. Richard, she was just protecting her own interests. And maybe she has some valid points." "What valid points?" "About us being very different. About the complications this could bring for Emma. About—" Richard interrupted her, taking her hands. "Jennifer, look at me. Are you doubting us because of what Elizabeth said?" "Not exactly doubting, but worrying. What if she's right about me taking advantage of you? Do you think you're taking advantage of me? Not intentionally, but maybe unconsciously. Perhaps I'm so desperate for stability that I'm confusing gratitude with love. Richard stayed quiet for a moment. Jennifer, can I ask you something? Of course. If I were just an ordinary man, without a home of my own, without financial stability, would you still feel the same way about me? Jennifer thought carefully about the question. Yes, she said finally, because what attracted me to you wasn't your material possessions. It was your kindness, your intelligence, your sense of humor, the way you treated me with dignity when everyone else ignored me. Then why are you doubting? Because I'm afraid. Afraid of being wrong, afraid of disappointing you, afraid of losing you. Richard pulled her closer. Jennifer, I have fears too. I'm afraid I'm not good enough for you. I'm afraid my family problems will drive you away. I'm afraid you'll realize you could find someone better. Richard, but you know what I've learned? Love always involves risks. There's always the possibility of pain, of loss, of disappointment. But the alternative is to live without love, and that's not really living. Jennifer nestled into his arms. You're right. I'm sorry for doubting. Don't apologize for having fears. Just promise me you'll talk to me when they come up, instead of keeping them to yourself. I promise. They stayed embraced on the sofa, each lost in their own thoughts about the challenges still to come. And the challenges really did come. The following week, rumors about Richard's relationship began circulating at the hospital. Some colleagues began treating him differently, some with curiosity, others with poorly disguised disapproval. The hospital director, Dr. Reynolds, called Richard into his office on a Friday. Richard, have a seat. We need to talk. About what? About your personal life and how it might be affecting your position here at the hospital. Richard felt his stomach tighten. My personal life doesn't interfere with my work. Perhaps not directly, but rumors interfere with the institution's reputation, and it has come to my attention that you are living with a homeless person. Dr. Reynolds, with all due respect, my private life is not the hospital's business. Normally, I would agree, but when our reputation is at stake, our reputation is at stake because I'm helping someone in need. It's at stake because patients and their families trust our professional judgment, and when there are questions about the personal judgment of our doctors, Richard stood up, furious. Dr. Reynolds, I am one of the best cardiologists in this city. My success rates speak for themselves. My personal life does not affect my professional competence. Nobody is questioning your medical competence. But there are other considerations. What considerations? The fact that I'm helping a woman who lost everything due to a crime? The fact that I found love in an unexpected situation? Dr. Reynolds sighed. Richard, I like you. You're an excellent doctor. But I need to think about the good of the institution. Perhaps it would be best if you considered to be more discreet about this situation. More discreet how? Perhaps she could find another place to stay, some suitable shelter, some social program. Are you asking me to abandon the woman I love because it's inconvenient for the hospital? I'm asking you to consider all the implications of your choices. Richard headed to the door. Dr. Reynolds, let me make this very clear. I will not abandon Jennifer. If that's a problem for the hospital, perhaps it's time for me to consider other career options. Richard, don't be hasty. I'm not being hasty. I'm setting priorities. When Richard got home that night, he was visibly shaken. Jennifer immediately sensed something was wrong. What happened? Richard told her about the conversation with the director. Jennifer listened in silence, feeling guilt grow in her chest. Richard, this is because of me. You could lose your job because of me. Jennifer, no. Yes, it's true. And I can't allow that. You worked years to build your career. You can't throw it away for me. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm making a choice. A choice that could destroy you professionally. Richard sat down beside her. Jennifer, my career is important, but it's not the most important thing in my life. You are. Richard, be rational. Without your career, without your financial stability, what do we have? How will we survive? We'll find a way. There are other hospitals, other opportunities. And if there aren't? What if word gets around and no one wants to hire you? Then we'll find another way to live. Jennifer shook her head. I can't let you do this. I can't be responsible for destroying your life. You're not destroying my life, you're saving it. But Jennifer had already made a decision. That night, after Richard fell asleep, she wrote a letter. Richard, by the time you read this, I will have already left. Please don't look for me. I love you more than I thought it was possible to love again. That's exactly why I can't stay. Your career, your reputation, your future. All of that is worth more than anything I can offer in return. You say you love me and I believe you. But love sometimes means making difficult choices to protect the person you love. I'm not a coward. I'm a realist. Our situation is unsustainable in the long run, and the longer we wait to face it, the more painful it will be. You gave me back my dignity, my hope, my ability to love. For that I will be eternally grateful, but now I need to go my own way. Be happy, Richard. Find someone who can be by your side without causing complications. You deserve that. With all my love, Jennifer. She left the letter on the kitchen table, gathered her few things, and left the house quietly at 5 in the morning. Jennifer returned to the streets, but this time with one difference. She had a plan. During the week she spent in Richard's house, she had reconnected with an old colleague, a retired teacher like herself, who had mentioned volunteer opportunities at a community library. Jennifer sought out that library and offered to help with an adult literacy program. The work didn't pay, but it gave her purpose and a reason to go on. She also started going to a social assistance center that offered professional training courses. She signed up for a basic computer skills course and a business writing course. Slowly, methodically, Jennifer began to rebuild her life. It was hard. It was painful, especially because she missed Richard every day. But she was determined to prove, to herself, to him, to the world, that she could recover on her own. Meanwhile, Richard was desperate. He found Jennifer's letter the next morning and immediately went out to look for her. He visited all the shelters, spoke with social workers, walked the streets where she used to stay. No one had seen her. "Dad, you need to eat something," said Emma, finding him in the kitchen 3 days later, still wearing the same clothes. "I can't, Emma. I need to find her." "Dad, maybe she's right. Maybe it's for the best." Richard looked at his daughter, surprised. "How can you say that? I thought you liked Jennifer." "I do like her, very much. But I saw how you both were suffering under all the pressure. Maybe she did the right thing by leaving. The right thing would have been for us to talk and find a solution together. And what if there was no solution?" The question hung in the air. Richard had no answer. At work, the situation didn't improve. Dr. Reynolds was clearly relieved that the problem was over, but Richard was so distracted that his medical performance began to suffer. He made small mistakes, forgot appointments, and showed himself to be irritable with colleagues and patients. At a particularly low point, he almost prescribed the wrong medication dosage for a patient. It was Emma who finally made him come to his senses. "Dad, you need to stop this," she said one Friday night, finding him once again scouring the internet for clues about Jennifer's whereabouts. "I can't stop. I need to find her." "Why?" "Because I love her, because she's out there alone, because—" "Dad, stop. Listen to what I'm saying." Richard finally looked up from the computer screen. "You're destroying yourself," said Emma. "You're losing weight, you're not sleeping, you're doing a poor job at work. If you keep this up, you'll end up losing everything anyway." But Jennifer made a choice. A difficult choice, but a choice. And maybe you should respect it. How can I respect a choice that's making us unhappy? Because sometimes the person we love makes decisions we don't understand. And if we truly love them, we need to trust their judgment. Richard leaned back in his chair, exhausted. "I don't know how to live without her, Emma. I don't know how to either. But I know that if you destroy your life, you'll be disrespecting the sacrifice she made." Emma's words hit Richard deeply. She was right. Jennifer had sacrificed her own happiness to protect him, and he was throwing it all away anyway. That night, for the first time in weeks, Richard took a proper shower, ate a full meal, and slept for 8 hours straight. The next morning, he returned to work with renewed determination. If he couldn't be with Jennifer, he could at least honor her memory by being the best doctor possible. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to leave a like, and especially to subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out, now continuing. 2 months passed. Jennifer had managed to get a small apartment in a simple neighborhood through a housing program for people in vulnerable situations. It was just one room and a kitchenette, but it was hers. She had also gotten a part-time job at a bookstore, organizing inventory and helping customers. The salary was low, but enough to cover her basic needs. In her free time, she continued her volunteer work at the library and had started to write. Not a book, but letters. Letters to Richard that she would never send. Letters where she poured out her feelings, her longing, her fears. Writing helped her process the pain of the separation, but also to keep alive the hope that perhaps, someday, they could meet again under better circumstances. Richard, for his part, had become a workaholic. He worked extra shifts, took on all the difficult cases, and buried himself in work to try to forget the pain. His medical competence returned to normal, but something had changed in him. His colleagues noticed he was more compassionate with patients facing financial difficulties, more willing to treat people without health insurance, more engaged in the hospital's social work. It was as if meeting Jennifer had awakened a social consciousness in him that had been dormant. It was on a Sunday in July that fate decided to intervene again. Richard was on duty in the emergency room when an emergency case arrived. A woman had fainted at the public library and was showing symptoms of severe hypoglycemia. When the stretcher arrived, Richard froze. It was Jennifer. She was unconscious, much thinner than when he had last seen her, with pale skin and irregular breathing. "Jennifer!" he shouted, running alongside the stretcher. "Jennifer, can you hear me?" "Doctor, do you know the patient?" asked the nurse. "Yes, very well." Richard took personal charge of Jennifer's care, administering intravenous glucose and monitoring her vital signs. Gradually, she began to regain consciousness. "Richard," she murmured, still confused. "I'm here," he said, holding her hand. "You're in the hospital, you're safe." Jennifer tried to sit up, but he gently stopped her. "Don't move yet. You had severe hypoglycemia. You need to be under observation." What happened?" "From what we understand, you fainted at the library. When was the last time you ate?" Jennifer tried to remember. "Yesterday morning, I think." Richard felt a pang of guilt and worry. "Jennifer, you can't go so long without eating, especially if you're working." "I know. I just was saving money to pay this month's rent." The admission broke Richard's heart. Jennifer was going hungry to maintain her independence. "Where are you living?" Jennifer hesitated, but ended up telling him about the small apartment, about the job at the bookstore, about the courses she had taken. Richard listened with a mixture of pride and sadness. Pride because she had managed to get back on her feet on her own, sadness because he knew she was struggling much more than she should have to. "Jennifer," he said when she finished speaking, "why did you leave without giving me a chance for us to talk?" "Because I knew you would try to convince me to stay, and I knew that if you insisted, I wouldn't have the strength to resist." "And would that be so bad?" "It would be for you. Richard, you almost lost your job because of me. Your ex-wife was using our relationship against you. I was causing more problems than joy in your life." "That's not true." "It is, and you know it." Richard was quiet for a moment. "Jennifer, can I tell you what happened after you left?" "If you want." "I fell apart. I stopped eating. I stopped sleeping. I almost made serious mistakes at work. Emma had to give me a talking to bring me back to reality." Jennifer felt tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry. That wasn't what I wanted." "I know. But it made me realize something." "What?" "That without you, nothing else matters. My career, my reputation, my financial stability, none of it is worth anything if I can't share it with the person I love." "Richard, let me finish. For the last 2 months, I've been thinking a lot about our situation. And you were right about one thing. There were real problems we needed to face, but you were wrong about another thing. What? You thought the only solution was to give up. But there are other options. What options? Richard took a deep breath. I resigned from the hospital. Jennifer sat up abruptly in bed, ignoring the dizziness. You did what? I resigned. Actually, it hasn't been officially accepted yet. I have to serve a notice period. But I'm leaving. Richard, no. Why did you do that? Because I realized I don't want to work at a place that judges me for the people I choose to love. And because I have other plans. What plans? I'm going to open a community clinic. A place where people like you, people who have lost everything but still deserve quality medical care, can be treated with dignity. Jennifer was speechless. I already have interested investors, Richard continued. Doctors who think like I do, who want to practice social medicine. It won't be as profitable as the private hospital, but it will be more meaningful. And if it doesn't work out, then I'll try something else. Jennifer, over the last few weeks, I've realized there are many ways to be a doctor. I don't necessarily need to work for the elite to make a difference. Jennifer was crying now. Richard, this is incredible, but you didn't have to do this for me. I didn't do it for you, I did it for me. Because meeting you showed me a side of life I was ignoring. It showed me that there are people fighting every day for dignity and survival, and I was in a position to help, but chose to treat only those who could pay. And your daughter? What does she think about this? Richard smiled. Emma was the one who gave me the idea. She said she'd never seen me as excited about anything as when I talked about you and how I wanted to help people in your situation. Jennifer wiped her tears. Richard, even if you open this clinic, it doesn't solve our problems. We're still from very different worlds. Are we? He took her hands. Jennifer, you have your own apartment, a job. You're rebuilding your life. I'm going to have a new profession, probably less prestigious but more satisfying. It seems to me we're in the same world now. But what about social pressure? People will still judge. Let them judge. Jennifer, I'm 52 years old. If I'm still worrying about what others think of my personal life, then I'm wasting too much time. Jennifer looked into his eyes and saw determination, love, hope. Richard, are you sure about this? Sure you want to start everything over? Jennifer, the last 2 months without you were the worst of my life. If this is what I need to do for us to have a real chance together, then yes, I'm sure. And what if I say I want to try too? Then let's try. Together this time. No lies, no hiding anything. No running away when things get tough. Jennifer smiled through her tears. Okay, let's try. Richard leaned in and kissed her right there in the hospital bed, sealing a new chapter in their lives. Jennifer was kept in the hospital for 24 hours for observation. During that time, Richard filled her in on all the developments of the last 2 months. Emma had become an active advocate for their relationship, even going so far as to argue with her mother when Elizabeth made disparaging remarks about Jennifer. The community clinic was really taking shape. Richard had found other idealistic doctors, secured initial funding through an NGO, and found a space in an underserved area of the city. I'd like you to work with us, he said. Richard, I'm not a doctor. No, but you are a teacher. We could have a disease prevention education program, health literacy, nutritional guidance. There are many ways to contribute to a community's health beyond medicine. The idea excited Jennifer. It was a chance to return to teaching, to use her knowledge to help people in a situation similar to what she had gone through. Would it be paid? Not much, but yes. Enough for us to live comfortably if we combine our resources. Our resources? Richard blushed slightly. Jennifer, I know it's early to talk about this, but I'd like us to live together. For real this time, as a couple building a future. Jennifer felt her heart race. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. And Emma? Emma said that if you don't accept, she'll move to her grandmother's because she can't stand seeing me depressed anymore. Jennifer laughed. She didn't say that. No, but that was the sentiment. Jennifer was quiet for a moment, weighing all the implications. Richard, if we're going to do this, we need to establish some rules. What rules? First, total communication. No hiding worries or fears. If something is bothering us, we talk about it immediately. I agree. Second, financial independence. I want to contribute equally to the household expenses. I don't want to be dependent. Jennifer. No, Richard. This is important to me. I need to know I'm with you by choice, not by necessity. All right, I agree. Third, patience with Emma. She's being amazing now, but it's normal for a teenager to have ups and downs regarding the new family situation. Obviously. And fourth, total honesty about our feelings. If at any point one of us feels things aren't working, they need to speak up. No running away. No disappearing in the middle of the night. Richard smiled. That last rule is specifically for you, isn't it? Yes. I promise I won't run away again. And I promise not to give you reasons to want to run away. They sealed the agreement with a kiss. 3 months later, Jennifer was standing in front of the first class of her new health education program. There were 15 adults, mostly women, some in situations similar to what she had faced. "Good morning, everyone," she said, smiling. "My name is Jennifer Collins, and I'm going to teach you about basic nutrition and disease prevention. But before we begin, I want you to know something about me. A year ago, I was living on the streets of this city." A murmur went through the room. "I'm here today because I believe everyone deserves quality information on how to take care of their health, regardless of their financial situation. And because I learned that it's always possible to start over, no matter how lost you feel." The class was a success. Jennifer discovered her personal experience made her much more effective as an educator. People trusted her because they knew she understood their difficulties. Meanwhile, in the next room, Richard was seeing his 10th patient of the day. The clinic was performing above expectations, serving an average of 50 people daily. It was tiring work, sometimes frustrating due to lack of resources, but deeply rewarding. Richard felt he was finally making a real difference in people's lives. At the end of the day, he and Jennifer walked together to the car, comparing notes about their patients and students. "How was class today?" he asked. "Amazing. There was a lady, Mrs. Grace, who reminded me a lot of myself a few months ago. She lost everything in a scam similar to what I went through." "And what did you tell her?" "The truth. That it's possible to rebuild, that she's not alone, and that accepting help is nothing to be ashamed of." Good advice. I learned from someone special. They smiled at each other, feeling the satisfaction of a day well lived. At home, Emma was waiting for them with dinner ready. She had become a surprisingly good cook and enjoyed trying new recipes. "How was school today?" asked Jennifer, serving herself some salad. "Good. Oh, and Jennifer, I wrote an essay about you for English class." "About me?" "About inspiring people. I wrote about how you lost everything but didn't give up, and about how your parents met in an unconventional way but found true love." Jennifer felt her eyes well up. "Can I read it?" "Of course. I got an A." After dinner, while Emma did her homework, Jennifer and Richard sat on the living room sofa. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, noticing she was quiet. "About how strange life is. A year ago, I was sleeping in shelters, with no hope things would get better. Today, I have a home, a job I love, a family." "A family?" Jennifer blushed. "Well, you and Emma. I mean, if you consider me part of the family." Richard pulled her closer. "Jennifer, there's something I want to talk to you about." "What?" He took a deep breath and took a small box out of his pocket. Jennifer felt her heart stop. "Richard." "Jennifer Collins, you changed my life in every possible way. You taught me about courage, about hope, about true love. You made me a better person and a better doctor." He opened the box, revealing a simple but beautiful ring. "Will you marry me?" Jennifer looked at the ring, then at Richard's hopeful face, then at Emma, who had appeared in the doorway smiling. "Did Emma know?" she asked. "She helped me choose the ring," admitted Richard. "And did she approve?" "More than approved. She said if you refused, she'd try to convince you personally." Jennifer laughed through her tears. In that case, yes, I will marry you. Richard slid the ring onto her finger while Emma screamed with joy and ran to hug them. When are we going to tell Mom? Asked Emma. Richard and Jennifer exchanged looks. Soon, said Richard, but first we have a wedding to plan. The wedding happened 6 months later in the same park where they had met. It was a simple ceremony with few guests, some colleagues from the clinic, friends from the library where Jennifer volunteered, and of course Emma as the maid of honor. To everyone's surprise, Elizabeth showed up at the ceremony. She approached Jennifer before the ceremony began. Jennifer, she said, clearly uncomfortable, can I talk to you? Of course. They moved a little away from the other guests. I want to apologize, said Elizabeth, for the things I said, for the way I treated you. I was angry and jealous. Jealous? Richard never looked at me the way he looks at you. Even when we were married, I knew something was missing. And when I saw you together, I realized what it was. Jennifer was surprised by Elizabeth's honesty. Elizabeth, thank you for saying that. I know it couldn't have been easy. Emma made me realize I was being unfair to both of you. She also made me realize that maybe it's time for me to stop living in the past and start building my own future. That's good advice. Jennifer, take care of him and let him take care of you. You deserve to be happy. Thank you. The ceremony was simple but moving. When the officiant asked if there was any reason they shouldn't be married, there was a moment of tension, but everything went well. When Richard and Jennifer kissed as husband and wife, some of the guests applauded, others cried, and Emma shouted, "Finally!" Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to leave a like and especially to subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we are just starting out. Now continuing. 2 years later, the community clinic had expanded to include mental health services, physical therapy, and a job training program. Jennifer had become the education coordinator and developed a complete curriculum for prevention and health promotion. They had moved to a bigger house, not for show, but because they needed space for Jennifer's books and Richard's office, where he planned the clinic's new projects. Emma was in her senior year of high school and had decided to study social medicine, inspired by her parents' work. I want to work with people like Jennifer, she said one night during dinner, people who have lost everything but still have so much to contribute to society. That's a beautiful choice, said Jennifer, proud. And you, Jennifer, don't you think about going back to teaching regular classes? Asked Richard. Jennifer considered the question. Sometimes I do, but I feel my work at the clinic is more important right now. I'm helping people who really need it, people the traditional education system can't reach. And you're amazing at it, said Emma. You should see the reviews students give Jennifer's courses, Dad. Everyone says she changed their lives. We all change each other's lives, Jennifer said philosophically. That's how life works, when we allow ourselves to truly connect with people. That evening, after Emma went to sleep, Jennifer and Richard sat in the garden of their house watching the stars. What are you thinking about? Asked Richard. About how lucky we are, Jennifer replied. How many people go through their entire lives without finding true love? And we found each other in the most unlikely way possible. It wasn't luck, said Richard. It was destiny. Do you believe in destiny? I believe some people are meant to find each other. It might take time. It might happen under the strangest circumstances, but when it happens, you know. How did you know? I knew because you defended me that first time, even without knowing me. I knew because you talked about books with passion, even while living on the streets. I knew because you had dignity, even when everything was against you. Jennifer nestled against him. And I knew because you offered me food without asking questions, because you treated me like a human being when everyone looked at me as if I were invisible, because you saw who I really was behind the circumstances. And now, asked Richard, do you still see who I really am? I see a man who had the courage to leave everything behind to follow his principles. I see someone who uses his talents to help those most in need. I see the father Emma deserves and the husband I never thought I could have. Jennifer, and you? What do you see when you look at me? I see the bravest woman I know. I see someone who lost everything but never lost hope. I see a teacher who transforms lives, a wife who completes me, a person who makes me want to be better every day." They stayed silent for a moment, lost in their thoughts. "Richard," Jennifer finally said, "can I tell you a secret?" "Of course." "Sometimes I'm still afraid I'll wake up and discover all this was a dream, that I'm still living on the streets, that you don't exist, that our life together is just something my mind created to help me survive." Richard kissed her gently. "It's not a dream," he said. "It's real. We are real, and will continue to be real for many years to come." "How can you be so sure?" "Because what we have isn't based on fantasies or illusions. It's based on true love, mutual respect, and shared values. That kind of love doesn't disappear." Jennifer smiled. "You're right. And you know what else?" "What?" "Even if this were a dream, I wouldn't want to wake up." 3 years later, Jennifer was pregnant. It was a surprise for both of them. At 40 and 55, they weren't thinking about having children anymore. But when the test came back positive, their joy was immense. "A baby," said Richard, still processing the news. "We're going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" asked Jennifer nervously. "I'm thrilled, and you?" "Scared but happy." Emma, now a medical student, was emotional at the news that she would be a big sister. "Finally, I'll get to teach someone about literature," Jennifer joked. "And I'll teach about medicine," said Richard. "And I'll teach how to survive both of you," Emma laughed. Jennifer's pregnancy was smooth, but she and Richard decided to slow down their work pace to enjoy this special time in their lives. Jennifer started working only 3 days a week at the clinic, using the extra time to write a book about her experience. Not a self-help book, but an honest narrative about loss, recovery, and love, found in the most unexpected places. Richard also reduced his hours, delegating more responsibilities to the other doctors at the clinic and focusing on expanding the prevention program. The baby was born on a sunny spring morning. She was a girl whom they named Hope. "Hope Collins Anderson," said Jennifer, holding her daughter for the first time. "She was born to remind us that there are always reasons to have hope." "She's perfect," said Richard, gently touching the baby's little face. "Just like our family," said Emma, kissing her little sister's forehead. 5 years later, the family had found its perfect rhythm. Hope was a cheerful and curious child who loved books as much as she loved playing doctor with the toys Richard brought home. Emma had graduated from medical school and was doing her residency at the same clinic where her parents worked. She had specialized in community medicine and showed the same passion for helping those in need as Jennifer and Richard. The clinic had become a national model for social medicine, receiving visits from healthcare professionals from all over the country who wanted to replicate the project in their cities. Jennifer had published her book, Unlikely Encounters, which had become a bestseller and led her to give talks about overcoming and starting over at various universities and companies. Richard had been invited to join the National Public Health Council, a position he accepted on the condition that he could continue working at the clinic 3 days a week. But most importantly, they were happy. Genuinely, deeply happy. One Saturday afternoon, the family was gathered in the backyard. Hope was playing with dolls while Emma studied for a test, and Jennifer graded her clinic students' evaluations. Richard watched the scene, feeling immense gratitude for everything they had built together. "What are you thinking about?" asked Jennifer, noticing his distant look. "About how that day in the park changed everything," he replied. "If I hadn't seen Elizabeth approaching, if I hadn't asked for your help, we would have found each other another way," said Jennifer with conviction. "I'm sure of it." "How can you be so sure?" "Because some people are meant to be together. It might take a while, it might happen in the strangest ways, but when it does, you know." Richard smiled, recognizing his own words. "You're right. And you know what else?" "What?" "I wouldn't change a thing. Not the suffering we went through, not the difficulties we faced. Everything brought us here, to this perfect moment." Jennifer stood up and went to sit beside him on the garden bench, the same bench they had bought as a tribute to the place where they met. "Richard, can I ask you a question?" "Always." "Do you regret anything? Leaving the hospital, changing your life, marrying me?" Richard looked at her seriously. "Jennifer, do you want the honest answer?" "I always want the honest answer." I regret not having the courage to change sooner. I regret wasting years in a life that didn't make me happy. I regret almost losing you because I was afraid of what others would think. But you don't regret marrying me? Jennifer Collins Anderson, he said, taking her hands. Marrying you was the best decision of my life. You gave me love, purpose, a beautiful daughter, a wonderful stepdaughter, and a career that truly matters. How could I regret that? Jennifer smiled, feeling complete. I don't regret anything either, she said. Not the difficult years, not losing everything, because all of that brought me to you. At that moment, Hope ran over to them. Daddy, Mommy, look what I drew. She showed a colorful drawing of a happy family. A man in a white coat, a woman with a book in her hand, a young woman also in a white coat, and a little girl holding all their hands. It's our family, explained Hope proudly. It's beautiful, my love, said Jennifer, hugging her daughter. Emma, come see Hope's drawing, called Richard. Emma approached and smiled at seeing her little sister's artwork. Perfect, she said. It's exactly how we are. The family embraced there in the garden under the golden light of late afternoon. It was a simple moment, but perfect in its simplicity. 10 years later, on a similar afternoon, they would gather again in that same garden to celebrate Jennifer and Richard's 15th wedding anniversary. Hope, now 10 years old, would be a determined girl who wanted to be a teacher like her mother. Emma would be a respected doctor, married and expecting her first child. The clinic would have transformed into a community health complex serving thousands of people per month. Jennifer would have published 2 more books and become a nationally recognized speaker. Richard would have received several awards for his work in public health, but none of that would matter as much as the fact that they would still love each other with the same intensity as the first day, still support each other through all difficulties, still find joy in the small things of daily life. Because true love isn't about grand gestures or epic moments. It's about choosing every day to stand by the person you love, to grow together, to face difficulties as a team, and to never lose the mutual admiration that made them fall in love initially. And when people asked Jennifer and Richard what the secret to a happy marriage was, they would always give the same answer: honesty, respect, communication, and the courage to be vulnerable with the person we love. Because that's what they found that unlikely day in the park. Not just love, but a life partner who accepts them completely, challenges them to grow, and makes each day better than the last. And when Hope grew up and asked how her parents met, they would tell the whole story. About how a desperate request in a park turned into the greatest love of their lives. About how the most unlikely circumstances can lead to the most beautiful destinies. And she would grow up believing that true love exists, that it's possible to start over as many times as necessary, and that sometimes life's greatest gifts come wrapped in the most unexpected packages. Finally, Jennifer and Richard continued living their love story, aware that they had found something rare and precious, not just a romantic relationship, but a true partnership that made them better people and radiated hope to everyone who knew them. They knew they would still face challenges. Life always brings challenges. But they also knew they would face everything together, with the strength that comes from genuine love and the certainty that they had chosen the right partner for life's journey. And so what began as a desperate meeting in a New York City park became one of the most beautiful love stories, proof that sometimes the greatest miracles happen when we least expect them, and that true love can flourish in the driest soils. End of story. And you, dear listener, what did you think of this story of Jennifer and Richard? Have you lived or know someone who went through a moment of new beginning like Jennifer's? Leave in the comments your opinion about this story and tell us if you believe that love can truly overcome all social differences. Your participation is very important to us. Don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories we've prepared so lovingly for you.